Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of Tales from the Fandom. It is hard to believe that 1 month from today, we are looking at Avengers 3 Infinity War, coming out April 27th. 10 years, 18 movies. It is just unfathomable that a movie studio was able to do 18 movies that interconnect and weave a story to get us to where we are today. It's also hard to believe that when I first got into comics in middle school back in 1991, the Infinity Gauntlet series was the thing that was being talked about all around the school and at the comic book stores at the time. And now here we are again, and we're talking about what's going to be happening with Avengers 3 and the untitled Avengers 4 movie. And I am joined with my close friend, Brady Calhoun. He's been a previous guest multiple times on this podcast. He's been into comic books longer than I have. We both overlap on our love of Marvel comics, and we explore the Marvel Cinematic Universe from Iron Man all the way up to Black Panther. We talk about the Captain Marvel controversies as far as that being pushed back several times due to Spider-Man Homecoming and due to the Ant-Man movie being slotted in. We talk about the movie machine, whether it's Marvel and DC, and what that machine has to do and the repercussions of that machine. But we also talk about like what we loved about the MCU over this past 10 years, the movies that we liked, the characters that we liked. And we, of course, talk about Infinity War and what might happen in the future regarding Avengers 4, Phase 5, and beyond. And, of course, we incorporate the possible merger or acquisition of 20th Century Fox and what that could mean for the MCU as well. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and definitely go check out some of the links that Brady's affiliated with. Brady is an author and a member of the Syndicate, and I will have links in the show notes to all of the stuff that you can buy or the websites you can visit for those works. And I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a little bit on the longer side, but definitely enjoy and take a listen. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you guys in another week. And welcome to a special episode of Tales from the Fandom as we take a look back over the years, 10 years to be exact, of Marvel Cinematic Universe as we are leading up to Avengers Infinity War, which is releasing on April 27th. And I am joined by the one guy I know who is all about comics and comic book movies, and that is Brady Calhoun. Welcome back to the podcast, Brady.
Hey, thanks, David. I'm happy to be here.
So, 10 years. I can't believe, number one, that it's been 10 years and we've had 18 movies filling out the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as it's now known. I cannot believe that we're living in that golden era of comic book movies being good.
Who knew such dreams were possible? You know, when we were kids, David, Batman came out. And it was okay. It was a good movie. We got the second one, and it was not good. And then you thought there was going to be more. They were going to connect Batman and Superman. That they were going to, start a universe the way the Marvel universe came to be, and it never happened. And so when Iron Man came out in 2006. Or 2007, I don't know.
2008.
2008, okay, I guess it makes sense. It's been 10 years, right? Let's start it off with me being terrible. When Iron Man came out in 2008, I walked out of the theater going, I can't believe somebody's finally done this correctly. They just made, I think Hellboy came out the year before, and that had been really close to the source material, had been a good movie, and then we got Iron Man, and it was the same type of thing where it was like, this is Tony Stark, this is Iron Man. They didn't movie it up or dumb it down. They did sort of all the right things with this movie. It was a great movie. and then they teased the Avengers at the end of it, and you just walked out and went, "Oh my gosh, it could happen." It's been amazing. I always tell people this is my Star Wars. You know, the movies that like 10 years, 20 years earlier that changed people's lives, or at least it were the movies that meant the most to them, were the Star Wars franchise, and we've gotten kind of what George Lucas promised when he promised everybody there was going to be 9 Star Wars movies, and then it didn't happen, and then it did happen, and it was terrible. You know, with Marvel, we've gotten 18 movies of. I don't want to say they're all great because they're not, but they're most of them are better than we could have hoped for. So I've been pretty happy all along.
Exactly. And when they started the announcement of Marvel's going to actually make their own movies on their characters, it was at a time where you had the X-Men locked away, you had Spider-Man locked away, you had a lot of those A-list characters in the comic book world already like locked away with other film companies, and you're pulling characters that at the time in comic books were not the A-list of the Marvel stable. You had, you're going with Iron Man, you're going with Thor, you're going with Captain America as your lead movies, and the Incredible Hulk, just to mention that one. But it's like you're not going with those well-known properties, and you haven't really had good luck with, say, like the Ang Lee Hulk. And
Yeah,
you're elevating these characters to be the leading characters in this franchise. It wasn't I remember when Iron Man came out, I was like, it's Iron Man. Like, I don't really like Iron Man. I'm not an Iron Man fan, but I went into the movie and was blown away by Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as the Iron Man that I knew from reading Avengers comics.
yeah. You know, that was early on. We all sort of thought, well, they don't have the characters to make this work. They have the characters that have never worked for anything outside of the comics. You know, they have Captain America, who I got to tell you, I never much enjoyed a Captain America comic book. They had Thor. I love the Walt Simonson run on Thor. They had Iron Man. Iron Man had some good runs, but they didn't. You know, Spider-Man is their number one biggest franchise. They didn't have that. The X-Men is second only to Spider-Man, or vice versa. They didn't have that, and so you just thought, well, what can they really do here? And then they teased you with the Avengers. Hulk comes out. It's terrible. It's the worst. It will always be last on my list of Marvel movies, and I'm amazed and happy that they at least made enough money or believed in themselves enough to keep going. And Iron Man 2 comes out, and it's not as good as Iron Man was. They're moving forward, and it's an okay movie, and you think, well, maybe we'll get to Avengers, but we'll be limping when we get there. And then Thor comes out, and Thor was great. It was, you watch it now and you can tell they didn't have any money. The stuff in Asgard looks good, but the stuff on Earth, especially when he's fighting the Destroyer, all looks terrible or not great. Captain America was perfect. I mean, that was one of their best movies, and they hit it out of the park. And then, people always like, which is the best Marvel movie? And for me, it's the Avengers, because the Avengers was the culmination of all of these movies, and got these characters together. We got things that we'd never seen before, that we'd seen in the comics maybe a million times, but we'd never seen in 30 feet on a screen. And it was so wonderful. It was such a good feeling to watch the Avengers unfold and feel like you were a part of it, even though you're a fan and you're just some guy who likes comic books or whatever. But it felt like this was our thing. and they'd made it, and they'd finally presented it to the world, and not only was it a success, it was a monster success. It felt like all those years we spent telling people how cool this stuff was, we didn't have to tell them anymore. They could see it for themselves, and the box office results proved that. I don't think I got anywhere near answering your question, but there you go.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I remember when they announced, specifically with Thor, the director being Kenneth Branagh, and I was like, that's perfect. That is a perfect casting for what I had hoped they were going to do, with more of it be like more on Asgard versus being on Earth. But the Earth stuff, meh, it's not the greatest, and the Destroyer is not the best, but the stuff on Asgard really knocks it out of the park. And I know on Twitter I think it's like at least like a month or two ago, someone asked like, "Oh, what's your favorite moment from the Marvel movies?" And it's that scene in the Avengers where they're all standing back to back and it circles around them, and it's like that is probably one of the most iconic moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Right there is that scene.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the things that are in the movies are the things that were in the comic books. Thor's relationship with Odin and his arrogance and all of that sort of stuff. That's Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Some of the stuff in that movie is Walter Simonson. Some of it is a host of other people who've written and drawn Thor over the years. Captain America, the first Avenger, is a large part some of Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America. So we finally had people who, I'm going to get to the DC universe and just destroy them in a minute, but we finally had people who believed in the comics, who didn't look down on the comics, who didn't think the comics were dumb, who were making movies from that perspective for the first time. Always before it had been like, I'm doing this for a paycheck. I'm doing this, because my kids like it or whatever. But with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we got people who were, at least in interviews with the press. I mean, I don't know who they are on the inside, but at least on the outside and for the product they made, they understood the comics, they were respectful of the comics, and they made movies that showed that. The thing I always tell people when I talk about the subject of people who are embarrassed by the comics is the second Fantastic Four movie that's supposed to have Silver Surfer and the Galactus in it. And it has Silver Surfer in it, and he looks great. And that movie is, I never want to watch it again, but the Silver Surfer stuff is actually fine. And the Fantastic Four, for the most part, act like the Fantastic Four. And then the guys who made the movie are embarrassed about Galactus. And you never see Galactus. They give you like a shadow of a thing that looks like the Galactus's outline, right? And that's it. And it was just like, don't make the movie, don't make Galactus the villain if you're going to be embarrassed by it. You don't have to put him in purple tights. Dormammu, the Steve Ditko Stan Lee Dormammu, looks nothing like the Dormammu, and I gotta quit saying Dormammu, that shows up in Doctor Strange.
Right.
But it's still, they found a movie way to make that character, to make that villain be the villain. And time moves on, and the way the characters look change. They get modernized with the times, and that's fine. And you can do that. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has always dumped the stuff that they felt was too ridiculous for the movies. The Falcon has Red Wing, but it's a drone. It's not an actual bird that he talks to. And that's the right answer. I can't argue with that. One of the things early on that actually concerned me was that they kept saying, well, we're basing this on the Ultimate Universe or the Ultimates, and that's closer to that's more edgy or whatever. Like early interviews, and really the way the characters look a lot of the times is based on that Ultimate stuff. But the Ultimates was really dark and cynical, and that's not what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is fun, and I always have a fun time when I go to one of these movies. And even if even if it's not a great movie, I'm going to have a fun time, and I know that. And I can take my my wife, I can take my sister-in-law, who I started taking them 10 years ago. My sister-in-law is 18, so she was 8, when I started taking her, and my wife had didn't care anything about these superheroes,
Mm-hmm.
but I started taking them, and they started getting into it. And now they know as much about these movies as I do. They will fight passionately for what they think is right and wrong in these movies. And you counteract that with maybe the worst movie-going experience of my life was, I'd taken them to a bunch of Marvel movies, and then we went to Man of Steel, and we all hated it because it's a miserable time. Superman is miserable for the whole movie. Here's a guy who can fly, and all he wants to do is pout. And it ends with him being miserable and killing the bad guy, which happens plenty of time in Marvel movies. That not that they're miserable, but they have to kill the bad guy for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a depressing slog through a movie, and we walked out and we were all just like, yeah, that was horrific, and that's the difference between the two properties. DC can make. I hope somebody takes over the DC Cinematic Universe and gives to us what Marvel's been able to do, or what Kevin Feige has done, or whatever, and understands that, the solution is not making the characters edgy or dark, not making every character a Christopher Nolan Batman character. The solution is making the character correct and the way they are in the comics, and that would mean that Superman's going to be fun and cheesy, and Batman's going to be brooding, and Wonder Woman's going to be this symbol of hope. And they managed to get Wonder Woman right, and they've done 5 of these movies, 5 or 6 of them. So they've had like one success out of 6 movies, which is not a good sign, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's interesting because I'm not a Superman fan, so I haven't watched Man of Steel. I haven't watched Batman versus Superman. I never watched Suicide Squad. The only one that came close was I wanted to watch Justice League, mostly for Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and I never went to go see it, and I'll probably see it at some point. But I didn't like, and I always tell people on the podcast, I never grew up with DC Comics. I was always Marvel Comics from whenever I started comics up through until about now. I'm starting to try and delve into DC Comics, but like I grew up with Batman the Animated Series. That's the Batman I know, and I grew up with the cheesy Batman movies. I know that Batman. But beyond that, like it's not my wheelhouse. Like my wheelhouse has always been the Marvel side of things.
Yeah. Well, and I always picked up a DC comic here or there. When Wizard magazine gave you like, here are the comics from this character you have to buy, and named 5 or 6 trade paperbacks for Superman and Batman and the Justice League. I always went out and bought all that stuff because I bought way too many comics growing up. And, you get a sense when you read their greatest tales or whatever of who these characters are and who these characters are supposed to be. And that is not represented in what DC is doing. The Marvel movies early on, there were probably, I'm looking at the list, there were probably as many misses as there were hits. They made money, but until we got to Thor, Captain America, the Avengers, it was on shaky ground in my opinion. And then uh, we came out of the Avengers with Iron Man 3, which wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't. No, I always tell people no. I always have a good time in a Marvel movie, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't just tell you they're not good. I don't think Iron Man 3 was very good. I like the PTSD stuff in Iron Man 3,
Mm-hmm.
but that sort of, this is a guy who's come out of a life-changing situation in the Avengers. He's seen what there is out there, and it tried to destroy the Earth, and he's crazy and guilty enough to think he's got to stop it, which plays into the whole next phase of the Marvel universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thor: The Dark World was. I mean, I love the romance stuff. Like they gave us 2 romance movies with Thor, and I'm okay with that. I liked some of that stuff, but I wouldn't go so far as to say, you know, Thor was a great movie. Thor: The Dark World was great. It wasn't great. Captain America: The Winter Soldier's great, and then we get to Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a movie that came along at just the right time and really, I don't want to say fixed, but really solved a lot of the problems. I think that what happens in in the cinematic universe that I've seen is every time the critics come along and they're like, it's the same thing over and over, and when are people going to get tired of this? Da 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 da. This is horrible. Like their lives are so bad because they have to go see movies all the time, and 2 or 3 times a year they have to see a Marvel movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like my life is horrible. And then something like Guardians of the Galaxy comes along, and they all have to come out of that theater and go, "This was really good, guys." Like, I've been telling you that I hate all the Marvel movies, but no, this one was really good, and you'll enjoy this one. Like they have to all sort of come out and admit it, and it was the same thing with after Black Panther came out. Where I mean, reading the reviews of Black Panther from the same people who had reviewed, whatever the last movie was before Black Panther is hilarious because they all come out of the last couple of movies going, "Oh, when will the superhero flood end?" There's like whatever there is, 10 superhero movies a year, 100 other movies every year, mainstream releases, but there's just too many superhero movies. And then they come out of Black Panther and like, this was the greatest thing ever. This is the best thing. It's like, yeah, guys, they've all been pretty good. Some of them are better than others, but you need the machine to get to, Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's, nobody's making, I feel conflicted about this. Without the machine, without DC, without Marvel, nobody's making a black superhero movie. Without the machine trying to make a DC cinematic universe, nobody's making a female centric superhero movie. The fact that the machine has worked and they're making money off these movies, they start to take what they consider to be risks, which really shouldn't be risks. They should have made Black Panther in Phase 2. Marvel hasn't made. It should have made a Black Widow movie in Phase 1 or Phase 2. I'll be the first to jump on the bandwagon and criticize them for that.
Mm-hmm.
That there should have been someone somewhere should have recognized. We need to. We got boys locked in. And white male superhero movies work. We need to take a risk here and try a Black Widow movie, or try to bring a black superhero or a Latino superhero, an Asian superhero into the mainstream and make a movie about them. And Marvel's got those folks. They've got tons of characters sitting around that they can do something like that with, but someone's got to take a risk on it.
Right, and I know I actually was privileged to like a Facebook conversation where my friend is doing the Marvel Watch, where it's like they're watching every Marvel movie leading up to Infinity War.
Right.
And
Yeah, I just finished Doctor Strange.
yeah, they hit Ant-Man with their friends, and she hates Ant-Man, not specifically for the Scott Lang Ant-Man, but it's
Yeah.
because they slotted Ant-Man in, because Edgar Wright at the time had like a great idea for Ant-Man. They put Ant-Man into the cycle, and then they added Spider-Man Homecoming based on the Sony deal that they worked out. And because of that, Captain Marvel got pushed back to 2019, and Black Panther got pushed back to when it came out here, February 2018. And that's one of like their biggest things is you have now added Ant-Man. Who do you really need the Ant-Man movie at that time? Is that character needing a movie? That was one of their key topics. And then you have Spider-Man, who has had 5 movies at this point, and now you're going to do Spider-Man again, versus you could have done Captain Marvel and Black Panther earlier on in that release cycle and had those characters featured. And you know, there's of course like the stuff that actually goes on in Ant-Man, as far as like, well, here you have Hope Pym, who, why didn't Hope, you know, get to be a featured character basically as like the Wasp or whatever, and why did you have to wait for a sequel? And you know, the stuff that goes on with that movie lends itself for the problems that a lot of people have with it. But yeah, it's like Marvel could have, but instead they decided to do obviously like the sequels to their movies, you know, Thor 2 and Ragnarok, and Iron Man 2 and 3 and Captain America. But yeah, it is a shame that we have not had the the Black Widow movie that they've now like been talking about, like, oh yeah, we're definitely having conversations about it. It's kind of a little bit late to be having conversations about it at this point.
It's too late for that. You know, that should have been and I don't want to jump on them too bad, because basically what Captain America, the Winter Soldier, is a Black Widow movie. You know, she's co-piloting that movie with him, and she does that in, I think, Iron Man 2, where she's introduced,
right?
And you know, and then she's a member of the Avengers. But yeah, they should have pulled the trigger and given her own movie. You know, right after the Avengers, right after, you know, Winter Soldier, right before Winter Soldier. You know, they should have found a compelling reason to give her own movie. My Ant-Man story is completely different from this. I was excited about Ant-Man, not because I think I have ever read an Ant-Man comic. I don't think I have ever read, before that movie came out, an Ant-Man comic. But but I was just like, it's Marvel. It's gonna be fine, you know. And everybody hated that movie before it came out. I mean, everybody you talked to was like, this is it. You know, this is Marvel's Waterloo, is this horrible Ant-Man movie that's going to, have you seen the trailer for this? This movie is going to be terrible. I went, loved it. Told my wife and my sister-in-law told me they would never watch it. They hated it so much for no reason. I mean, they didn't have the reasons that you described, because they're not into that much backroom Hollywood shenanigans. You know, they just thought it was dumb and it looked dumb and it was going to be a dumb movie and they didn't want to see it. And so before Civil War came out, I told them, I was like, y'all have to watch Ant-Man. He's going to be in Civil War, because they were excited for Civil War. I was like, you have to watch it. And so I made them watch it, kicking and screaming. And then the movie's over, and I'm looking at them, and they're like, yeah, that was good. You know, they were like, that was pretty good, you know, because of course it was, because it was a Marvel movie, and it wasn't going to be terrible. And I think Ant-Man is fine. You know, there's a scene in Ant-Man that bugs me, every time I see it, which is Hank Pym and Hope have this touching moment, and where they sort of reconnect, and Scott's there, and he tries to make a joke, and then he makes a joke about how he shouldn't have made a joke, and then he's like, I'm going to go make tea now, and walks out. And every time it's like nails on chalkboard. It's such a bad moment in an otherwise decent movie. And every time I see it, I'm like, I just cringe. It was like, oh, that's so bad. But, he goes and fights Falcon at the Avengers complex. He rides an ant. I mean, I don't know what else you want out of a Marvel movie, like it's so much fun, And my kid is into Thomas, so that Thomas scene where the train busts through the wall, just every time, man, just cracks me up. And so, yeah, they're not perfect, but I would say look at Hollywood itself. There are plenty of horrible examples of Hollywood executives doing terrible things and making folks do horrible things in movies and making movies for all the wrong reasons. Marvel's not innocent in a lot of this, but I think what's going to happen, because of the way this is set up, you're dealing with, in the comics, you can just have Captain America be Captain America forever, right? And you can have Tony Stark forever, and they're always young, and you just move whatever war they were in that created them to a later war. Like the Punisher used to be in Vietnam, and now he's always an Afghanistan vet, in modern retellings with the Punisher. But what's going to happen here is, we know Captain America's leaving. Chris Evans is it Chris Evans? Is that right, Chris? His contract's up. Every time Robert Downey Jr. is up there, he looks older, and these guys are going to have to pass the torch, whether in some cases, whether they want to or not. And they're going to pass the torch to characters that are more diverse, like Black Panther. They're going to pass the torch. Hope is going to get her shot in a movie that's titled Ant-Man and the Wasp, and so just by the nature of it, we're going to make 3 movies a year, and we can't make it with the same 4 or 5 white guys every time. And I think that's really going to be a lot of fun, as they make the next 3 and the next 3 and the 3 after that, where now you have maybe Ironheart, who in the comics is a young African American woman who, becomes Iron Man like and is a genius like Tony Stark, and you have, maybe Falcon takes over as Captain America, or maybe they find some other character, or maybe they retire Captain America and they do something else, but they're going to, just because of the nature of movie making, they're going to have to go to different characters. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be cool.
It is. Now, as far as Infinity War, what are you most looking forward to in the movie?
Have you seen the Facebook or Reddit post where it's just like, it shows Doctor Strange and Thor and Captain America, and then the subtitle is always screaming? They're always getting beat up and they're screaming. And I think they were in for a lot of screaming in this movie. I think there's going to be a lot of pain. I don't know that I'm emotionally ready to go to an Avengers movie where the Avengers just get defeated thoroughly, which is what I feel like we're in for, at least in the first one. That's where they're making 2 of them back to back, Brady. So, they make the second one and they come out victorious. That's what I'm telling myself. But I don't know, man. They've been teasing Thanos for 10 years, and or close to 10 years. I guess 8 years or 7 years, something like that. I'm looking forward to Thanos actually doing things, getting off his chair, going and grabbing some Infinity Stones. The Infinity Gauntlet is a huge one of those books from my childhood that means a great deal to me. It's up there with Miller's Dark Knight Returns. It's up there with, I'm trying to think of a print book and I can't think of one, because I'm a horrible person who only thinks about comic books, I guess. I don't know. One of the Star Trek novels, probably something Peter David wrote. But regardless, um, I'm looking forward to them doing at least some of. They're not going to do like the Scott Snyder Watchmen thing or the Scott Snyder 300 thing where it's shot for shot,
Mm-hmm.
Infinity Gauntlet. And I wouldn't want them to. It's its own thing. But there are things that happen in Infinity Gauntlet. The Silver Surfer crashes through Doctor Strange's window, and if you see the trailer, and I hope I'm not giving anything away, but if I am, too bad. But because I watched the trailer, you just have to live with it. But clearly, what happens is the Hulk is the one who crashes through Doctor Strange's window,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Loki, in the comic, Mephisto, who I will never forget the back of Mephisto's Marvel trading card. The back of it says, in case you don't know, Mephisto is the devil in the Marvel Comics universe. It says that on the back of his card, some lawyer must have written this. It says Mephisto is not the biblical devil, nor does he claim to be. sort of like, look, parents, he's not Satan. He just kind of looks a lot like Satan, but he's not. we need a bad guy for him to fight. So they're not gonna. I don't even know if they own the rights to Mephisto, but I don't think Thanos is gonna have that Mephisto character standing next to him, sort of trying to figure out how to steal the Infinity Stones from him and giving him bad advice. I think Loki's gonna play that role.
Mm-hmm.
From the looks of it, Loki's gonna stand there. I'm fascinated with, are they going to, I've heard a lot of talk about, Thanos has got this tragic backstory, which scares the tar out of me, because when you give a villain a tragic backstory, I don't know, it just, sometimes it works, it obviously worked with Killmonger in Black Panther, that's the best villain they've done, I think, pretty much. And I have a thing to say about villains in the Marvel Universe in a minute too. But, tragic Thanos backstory. I mean, his backstory is he's in love with death, and he can talk to a physical manifestation of death because he's such a weird, powerful character that he can actually talk to death. And because he's in love with death, he wants to kill half the universe. That's his backstory, as far as I'm concerned. And anything you add to that just scares me. Because they could really, really mess this up. If we get like Thanos crying in this movie, we got problems. I'm serious.
Well, I know that they did release like a Thanos miniseries. I think it was last year, where they delved into like Thanos' childhood and his evolution to where he like went today or whatever. But it's not the Thanos that I grew up with. It's not the Thanos that I'm used to from like years ago, like during Annihilation, that whole Annihilation series that was going on in the space Marvel. But it's definitely where I don't want it to be like Thanos centric, and what I've heard is like through like different media reports or whatever, is that Bruce Banner is going to be the one that's like, Thanos is coming and you guys have got to get your crap together. What have you been doing while I've been off world, basically, and like running around like warning everyone.
And he finds out they've been fighting with one another. Yeah. Someone wrote online, the thing that's really important about Civil War is, Thanos is coming. And Thanos is coming, and Earth is basically undefended. And the heroes are all hiding or fighting with one another. And so that's going to be a nice resolution to that storyline, where everybody has to, we've had that moment where T'Challa turns to Iron Man and says, get the people out of the city and get your suit of armor on, or whatever it is he says, and get this man his shield,
right?
And the thing about Marvel Cinematic Universe villains is that for the most part they're terrible.
Yes,
right?
yes.
They're not very good characters in and of themselves, and I'll be the first person to admit that to you. But the reason they're terrible a lot of times is because the heroes are so much more fun to be around. You know how everybody was like, oh, The Dark Knight is the best comic book movie ever made, or it's the best Batman movie ever made. No, it's the best Joker movie ever
Mm-hmm.
made. That movie's about the Joker. And that's all that movie's about. You know, no one cares about Bruce Wayne in that movie. No one cares about anything Batman does in that movie. That's a Joker movie, you know, that has Batman in it. And so far, for the most part, although I'd say I love Black Panther, but at least a good quarter of it, half of it is a Killmonger movie, right? And I mean, you got to have good villains to have good heroes, but Marvel has succeeded in part because you just want to hang out with these guys. They're fun, you know, they're fun to be around, and you don't care, you know, the villain is maybe it's dumb or maybe it's silly, or, you know, even the sort of good villains are. You never walk into a Marvel movie thinking the villain's going to win. I mean, you never walk into a superhero movie thinking the villain's going to win. And so there's some of that, I think, in this. When you're watching these movies, you know the bad guy's not gonna pull it off. I have nothing else to say on this topic.
Well, I will say that of the villains that have been around, the only ones I've ever cared for were Killmonger and Vulture. Like, those two are for me, they're the best villains. I like Loki, but like, I don't feel after the 3 Thor movies that we've had that Loki, like, yes, Loki is a bad guy. However, he's also like, he skirts that edge of being, he'll be on your team when it suits him, which fine.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, in a lot of these movies, the villain's plan is always terrible. The other thing I think that Marvel actually does really well, and one of the reasons why the villains are so weak is because Marvel doesn't make, every movie they make isn't life or death, earth ending, universe ending movie, right? So in Spider-Man Homecoming, the villain is just the Vulture who wants to steal some stuff from Tony Stark, and it's about Spider-Man, and yes, it's about the Vulture, but it's not, you know, what happens in that movie if Spider-Man fails? Some bad guys get some cool tech. You know, in, let me see, some of these others, it's the same way, where it's not the end of the world. You know, they make these, you know, Doctor Strange, even though he sort of fights Dormammu at the end, for the most part, he's fighting some knockoff B-level Doctor Strange villain you've never heard of, because they can't, you know, you can't just pull out like the A-list villain in the first movie, you know. They know they're going to make a second one of these, and so it can't just be, you know, the greatest hits of, he can't, you know, Spider-Man can't fight the Sinister Six in the first movie, despite what Sony may want, you know. You know, and I mean, it's one of the things. I think they do really well. They have these low stakes movies to set you up for the higher stakes Avengers movies. You know, if Spider-Man defeats Thanos, you know, with magic Tony Stark webbing or something, well, then what are we doing in Infinity War? You know. And I think because they have a plan, it makes these movies work really well. But I'll also agree that because they have a plan, they have at times run off really good writers and directors who wanted to make their own idiosyncratic thing, and the machine couldn't hack it. You know, Edgar Wright had to go, and Joss Whedon had to go. There's no bigger Joss Whedon fan than me. I mean, maybe you, but, you know, I mean, I love Joss Whedon, and I love all the stuff that he's done. I even watched every episode of Dollhouse, which was not an easy task. But, you know, you read those interviews after Age of Ultron, and he was just like, yeah, this thing killed me. And I was reading the interviews going, is that something you're allowed to say before your movie comes out? Like, wow, he really is they beat him down, and I hate that, but I can also understand that, like, the machine's got to get what the machine's got to get out of it, and not only does it want a good movie from you, because of course they want a good movie from you, but you've also got to sell the next 3 or 4 movies, and I think, that's part of what hurt him, and I hated that Thor Ragnarok dream sequence that ended up basically being thrown out because they found a director they liked, and what's his name, the guy who plays Thor, was like, I can't do another serious Thor movie. We got to fix this. And so that ultra serious Age of Ultron sequence where they're like, Thor, you killed us all, doesn't really make sense anymore. It's just sort of like, so that was the movie they were gonna make, and they didn't make it, thankfully. By the same token, James Gunn has made 2 really great Guardians movies that haven't connected to until Infinity War comes out, haven't all connected all that much to the Marvel universe. So cool things can happen and do. And one of the other things I tell people that I think, because I can't shut up about Marvel movies and I talk about them all the time, is that the movies are actually getting better as we go along. Like, if you look at Phase 2, and you got, hang on, let me get back up to Phase 2 in my Wikipedia entry. But you basically have Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Age of Ultron, Ant-Man. I'd say those were all divisive. You probably agree with me. I liked most of them, even if I tell you that Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World aren't very good. Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy are great. And then you get to Phase 3, you got Civil War. Civil War's great. I don't think anybody would argue with me that Civil War's great. Now, we showed that my mother-in-law is watching all the Marvel movies now, which is amusing, because my wife and my sister-in-law have now gotten her into it. She likes the Thor movies the best, in case you're wondering. Mother-in-law watched 2018 Thor movies, and they're not showing them to her really in any order, which is a terrible thing to do to somebody. So they watched Thor Ragnarok, and then they came because she wanted to watch Thor Ragnarok, and they were like, you got to watch Guardians of the Galaxy, and she was like, I don't want to watch that. It's got a rat in it. I don't watch no movies with no rats in them. And they're like, no, it's a raccoon, and you'll love it. If you like Thor Ragnarok, you'll love this. And they made her watch Guardians, and she did like Guardians. And then they watched, so think about it. They watched Thor Ragnarok, and then they watched Guardians, and then they jumped to Captain America Civil War. And like, you and I probably don't think about it because we've lived with these movies. I mean, I own all these movies. I bought them all on iTunes because I'm a crazy person. And I had to own them all so I can watch them. And of course, now I'm doing the rewatch. I'm getting ready for Infinity War, right? And so when I watch Captain America Civil War, there isn't a reference on the screen that I don't know exactly what's going on. And my mother-in-law was just lost from beginning to end, And I was listening to it, trying to watch it from her eyes because I watched it recently. I was like, yeah, there's an awful lot of that movie that you can't just walk into this movie and sit down, because why does what's his name, I want to say Bane, but of course it's not Bane, it's the Captain America villain. What is it? It's Crossbones. Crossbones is why does Crossbones hate Captain America? Well, you know why he hates Captain America if you saw Winter Soldier, because they gave you a whole I love that about these movies. I do. If you watched Winter Soldier and then you came to Civil War, you're like, oh my God, that's the guy from Winter Soldier, and here he is, and they're fighting. It's just like a Marvel comic book. It's so amazing. There's so many moments like that. But if you walk in off the street cold, and somebody tells you, "Hey, we should go see this movie," yeah, I mean, you're gonna be lost in that. We got Civil War. Civil War's great. Unless you're coming in cold off the street. If you're coming in cold off the street, you're dumb. You should have started at the beginning. We got Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is, if I look at Phase 3, I'd probably tell you that Doctor Strange is the weakest one. It's so visually inventive. But I would say the story is, it's not bad. It just doesn't ever really click the way some of these movies do. There's an awful lot of good stuff in that movie, and everything with his cape, with his cloak, is brilliant. And he is, again, they're not ashamed of making a Doctor Strange movie like that. The visual stuff they do is Steve Ditko's artwork come to life, and that's awesome. But I would say of the new ones, it's the weakest. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is as good as the first one. Come at me, bro. It makes me cry, like huge, like man tears. There's some dumb stuff in it. There's some dumb. There's a line that Ego says, like where he's talking about the song, like he's really driving the whole point of the movie home by telling his Star-Lord the lyrics of the song that we've already heard about 4 times. And you're just like, why? How, James, we got it. We got it, James. We're just like that sailor. We're at the sea, and you're just like, oh no, you didn't need it. Yeah, I did. I got the point.
We linked that up. But we're capable.
We got in our mind's eye when you showed it to us the 3 other times before you actually said it to him. I got it, but it was still. I mean, it was really good. I mean, there's a couple weak scenes like that one in there, but there's not much. I loved everything about Spider-Man: Homecoming. I don't think there was a scene in that movie that I didn't like, except when the kid says, she asks him what he's doing on the computer, and he says, watching porn. And I was just like, no kid, no kid answers that question that way. I do not believe it. But other than that scene in the car where the Vulture knows Spider-Man and Spider-Man knows the Vulture, what I'm talking about?
Yeah, when they're going to Homecoming. Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the best scenes in the MCU. Just so good and so full of tension. Like, you didn't think a Marvel movie could make you tense. And then Peter sitting in the back seat with the supervillain, and you haven't, what's going to happen? I have no idea, and this is amazing. And it, thankfully, it wasn't a scene where the hero goes, as happens all too often in superhero movies, where the hero goes, oh, by the way, I'm Spider-Man. Here, let me take off my mask and show you. The villain figured it out. Everybody played fair. And it works so well. It's so much. If you're going to have the villain find out, which I would argue that you should almost never do, but if you're going to have the villain find out, that was a perfect way to have the villain find out the hero's secret identity. Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, perfect. They are great movies. People walked out of Black Panther going, this is the best Marvel movie ever. And for a segment of the audience that needed Black Panther, it's absolutely the best Marvel movie ever made. For me, the best Marvel movie ever made is the Avengers, because that's what I needed, after a lifetime of reading comics and being ridiculed for it. I needed a movie that was a great comic book movie that also the rest of the world went, yeah, this stuff is really good. That's what I needed. You know, some people needed Black Panther, and some people needed Wonder Woman. You know, I needed the Avengers, and the Avengers is probably the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy always fight it out in my mind for the best movie, because the Guardians of the Galaxy is a movie that I have seen too many times, and I will watch that thing again tomorrow, you know, with you, because it is just fun, and you know, you didn't think Marvel had it in them, you know, to do like Space Marvel, to do all that weird, like the Badoon are going to show up sooner or later if they haven't already. You know what the Badoon are? They're like the lizard whatever aliens, like they're just ridiculous looking, and I know before the next 10 years is over, I'm going to be looking at like a Badoon warship, you know, shooting at Peter Quill for no good reason as he's running away from them. And it's going to be glorious, because it's the kind of thing you're like, that could never happen. You know, I'm never going to see that on a TV screen or on a movie screen. And then it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
You
know? Which of the Marvel movies are your most rewatchable movies for you?
Well, I mentioned I'm doing the rewatch, and it got easier as it went on, you know. So I just finished Doctor Strange, and I've got like Spider-Man, Thor, and then Black Panther when it comes out on Blu-ray or iTunes or something. I'll pick it up and watch it. So rewatching them all has been an interesting. I even rewatched Hulk, which I can't stand Hulk. But I forced myself to go through it, and it's not as horrible as I remember, but I still probably won't watch it again until I do, you know, 10 years from now when there's 40 of these things, and I'm trying to watch them all before Avengers versus X-Men versus the Fantastic Four, you know, monster movie they're going to make in 10 years. Most rewatchable, you know, Guardians is up there. Civil War is pretty high on my list as well. Not Civil War, excuse me. I always get Civil War and Winter Soldier mixed up. Winter Soldier and is like, I didn't know I loved Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
Like I read Captain America comics, and I read some Avengers comics, but I mean I mostly read like X-Men, you know, X Factor. I read some Spider-Man growing up. You know, I read a bunch of Incredible Hulk and Fantastic Four and stuff like that. And like, I never loved Captain America. And then they made Captain America into this like earnest. They didn't make him; he always was that. But he was this earnest character who also just was a great action hero. I mean, the action scenes in Winter Soldier, I'll put those up against like Jackie Chan action movies. You know, I'll put that stuff up against anything. Like, I know he's not doing his own stunts. I mean, I shouldn't insult Jackie Chan because even though he's like 70, he'll still destroy me. But you know, I love that movie, and you know, a lot of these movies, they say they're about more than heroes beating up villains. You know, Winter Soldier and Civil War are about what people owe to society, what society owes back to people, what government should be allowed and not allowed to do. What happens when you give a government unlimited power to, say, watch you, constantly. There's some deeper things going on in a lot of these movies. Having done the rewatch, I don't know that I can tell you which, because I'm close to burnout. To be perfectly honest, like, oh man, we've watched now 15 of these things, but yeah, Winter Soldier's on, Civil War's on, Guardians is on. I'll rewatch the heck out of those. It's easier probably to say which ones do I not want to rewatch. And I don't want to watch Hulk. I probably, Robert Downey Jr. is great in all the Iron Man movies, but I'm not sure they ever made like a really, other than the first one. The first one is really good, even if the villain is ridiculous. But other than the first one of those, they never made a good Iron Man movie. The Thors are okay, but I don't come home and go, I really need to watch which was the
Dark
second
World.
Thor, the Dark World. Man, I really want to watch Dark World again. Yeah, probably not. I mean, I'll watch it, but I'm not just jumping at the bit. Like, hey, Thor Dark World. Now, if I'm flipping channels, which I don't do because I don't have cable anymore, but if I were to be flipping channels and Dark World was on, and there's nothing else on, yeah, I'd probably watch Dark World again. Avengers is pretty high up there on the rewatchable list for me. That scene that everybody mentions, but I'll say it too. That scene where he goes, how exactly does he say it? There's only one God, ma'am, and he doesn't dress like that. Where he turns to Black Widow's like, you can't go out there, Steve. They're gods, and he's like, meh, and people were like, oh, Joss Whedon, defender of Christianity. I was like, no, you don't know Joss Whedon. Number one, and number two, that's an accurate and wonderful representation of that character. That's not something Joss Whedon would say, but it is dang sure something that Steve Rogers would say. And I think they've got Steve down, they've got Tony down. We were talking about villains earlier. I meant to mention this. The best villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Tony Stark. I mean, Tony Stark is the greatest villain. He creates Ultron, right? Like, if it had been, one of the guys from AIM or Hydra that had created Ultron and not your pal Tony Stark, they'd be sitting in a cell or dead. The Avengers would have killed them. And but it's Tony, and we love Tony, and it wasn't his fault. But yeah, he's like, and I love that about him. He's so driven. He's got such a nervous energy. Robert Downey Jr. plays him with this sort of nervous energy and this guilt. He's got this guilt hanging over him that he laughs off with sarcasm, and he's a wonderful character. And I'm going to be sad when he and Steve and 4 other Avengers are all dead, soon. But yeah, that's one of the things that's worked so well is they focused on the heroes and not the villains. Because they've done that, I feel like I know how Tony's going to react and how Steve's going to react, and to different situations. Right. So they've got the characters right, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and that means they've been able to sustain this for 10 years and 18
exactly.
movies.
Now, quick question: by the end of the movie, does Thanos have all of the Infinity Stones?
Yes, that's how the movie ends. It ends with in case you spoilers. I haven't seen the movie. I haven't read the script. I'm just going to tell you how the movie ends. The movie ends with Thanos getting the last Infinity Stone he needs, killing probably Captain America, and then snapping his fingers and wiping out half of humanity, half of not just humanity but life in the universe, and that's how the movie ends. And then there's a cut scene, where they give you some kind of hope after they've destroyed you, right? There's a cut scene at the end with Doctor Strange or somebody still alive. There was one other thing that happens in Infinity Gauntlet that I hope happens in Infinity War, which is Infinity Gauntlet. The Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock end up inside the Soul Stone. Like, there's a whole world inside the Soul Stone, and they hang out in there and talk and plan and scheme and all of that. And what's going to happen, I hope, is that Vision ends up inside the Soul Stone. Vision takes that Silver Surfer role and ends up, they take the stone off of him, but his consciousness is still inside it. And that, helps them defeat Thanos in Infinity War Part 2. But yeah, that's how it ends. I could have told you how Doctor Strange was going to end before I went and saw the movie. By the way, like I was telling people, people were like, "How does this movie end?" And I was like, "Yeah, let me tell you." He walks up to that big window at the end, wearing the cloak and looking like Doctor Strange after he's fought the whole movie to be Doctor Strange, and then he looks out the window, and that's the end. And people were like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yep, that's the ending." And I called it.
Wait.
Plenty of these movies I couldn't call the ending on, but I could call the ending on Doctor Strange.
I only asked that question because with the release schedule the way it is, the next two movies are Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then Captain Marvel, which is set in the 90s,
Yeah.
like predating most of the movies that we have already, released at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see with whatever happens in Infinity War, how that's going to affect especially Ant-Man and the Wasp, because it seems like it seems almost out of place for the movie to be taking part. It seems like Ant-Man and the Wasp should have come out before Infinity War.
Here's what I hope for. Okay, you read Marvel Comics growing up. In Marvel Comics, when they had a character who was like dead in another issue, but the publishing schedule was messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or they had a character who was off-world, let's say, and he was fighting in the Secret War, on another planet. They had a little box, and it said, the events of this issue take place before, Secret Wars. And then it had a little note that said, Editor Jim Scarlett next to it. Hi, Jim. That's what I hope both of those movies open up with, is a little box from the editor that goes, this movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, takes place before the action in Infinity War. And then the same thing with Captain Marvel. I'm excited about Captain Marvel. I've read like one Captain Marvel comic, maybe two. I think I read The Death of Captain Marvel when it was an old white guy with cancer. And so I haven't read any of the stuff with the character that Brie Larson is playing. But I'm a little weirded out because they keep creating this backstory that takes place between World War II and the present day. Like they had some of that in Ant-Man, where you had young Hank Pym and why he fought with, that he had A, been Ant-Man for a long time, and then B, he'd had this falling out with S.H.I.E.L.D. that they explained with Howard Stark. And so now they got a whole movie set in the 90s, and I'm just like, what? What's going to happen? My real fear is that they're going to get Fantastic Four, and they're going to set it in the 60s, or even the 50s. And I'm petrified that the closest I'm going to get to a good, it'll be a great Fantastic Four movie, but, all of those characters will be dead, and they'll have Reed Richards' kids or something be the Fantastic Four. There's coming a day where they can do that Walt Simonson Fantastic Four, where he did the he'll tell you it was a cash grab to boost sales, and he fake killed off Fantastic Four, and he created the new Fantastic Four, and it was the hottest, most popular characters in Marvel at that time. It was the Hulk,
Wolverine.
Wolverine wasn't Punisher. Excuse me. The Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider,
and Spider-Man.
And they were and he was just like, yeah, I'm trying to boost sales, like on the cover, buy this issue.
Yep,
here's the 4 most popular characters in the Marvel universe. And then there was like,
I remember buying that one.
Right, of course, everybody bought that one because you were like, oh my gosh, the new Fantastic Four. And he only did it for like 2 issues because I'm sure someone somewhere realized what he was doing too late and couldn't stop him. There was even in the second issue, there was the Punisher's in this issue because that was like the 5th most popular character. And the Punisher in that issue, it's so great. He's flying a helicopter for reasons, or maybe a jet, and he's going to blow them all up, like they're all fighting, and he's going to blow them all up, and then he's like, oh, well, I guess Ghost Rider's got it taken care of, and he flies off, and like he's in like 2 panels, and you're just like, Walt Simonson, you're a genius, for selling this so hard. But yeah, I like that there's a backstory and that this stuff happened between World War II and the present day. But I am concerned that um, it's almost going to be too much weight for its own good. So Brie
Hmm.
Larson's Captain Marvel's going to be a hero in the '90s that that really doesn't jive with the Avengers appear Iron Man being really the first superhero. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
And
so
they're supposed to answer the questions of, well, where has she been during
yeah,
that time period, and it's involving the Kree Skrull war that's going on out
okay,
in space. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm interested in it, and I want that question to be answered. I know that they had Captain Marvel in, like, having an appearance in Age of Ultron, but then they canceled that and they wanted to develop her further. And then
yeah,
with everything getting pushed back, like, there's talks of her showing up in Infinity War, but it's not confirmed if she's going to show up or not, or if it's going to be one of those, teasers
yeah.
at the
It'll be a
end.
cameo or a teaser at the end or something probably. One of the things that I love about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is they recognize when they've messed up and they fix stuff. For the first whatever it was, first 5 years, magic was a bad word in the Marvel Cinematic
Hmm.
Universe. They went out of their way in Thor. Like, you're trying to enjoy a movie about a Norse god turned superhero, right? Like, that's the premise. He's a Norse god. Jack Kirby and Stanley were always like, yep, he's just a Norse god and he's a superhero now. Deal with it, because we don't have to pay anybody for the rights because he's a mythical creature from, history. So we brought him along. He's got a hammer. He's got a cape. That's it. And then they introduce in Thor, and in Thor 2, they have Jane Foster being like, no, it's really just very advanced science. And you guys are
Hmm.
just
Yep.
very advanced creatures. And you're just like, shut up, Jane. I don't 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 give. I don't want to hear about science in a movie that's got Thor and Loki and Odin in it. I mean, just
Don't get your
let
science in my magic.
don't get your science in my magic. Let it be. And then eventually they have, because I think partly because they were like, oh. Well, what other character can we make that we think would be popular? Well, Doctor Strange would be really popular. And thankfully, for the most part, they spared us. They were like, yeah, people don't like it when we try and science this up. So the most we got in Doctor Strange, which was the freakiest, you know, weirdest movie they've ever made, is what the Ancient One says something about, like, well, you don't like to call it spells because you're a modern man, so you can call it the source code to the universe. It's like, okay, fine, as long as you'll do that cool thing where the whole room moves again, I'll give you that. Just give me some more magic and be quiet about the sciencey, stuff and how it works. I don't want to know how. It doesn't need to work.
All right, so we got Ant-Man and the Wasp, we got Captain Marvel, and then the next Avengers movie comes out, which, as everyone is well aware, and we talked about it before, Chris Evans,
Yeah.
Captain America, that's his last film. They have Sebastian Stan contracted for 9 Marvel movies in total, and he hasn't hit that
Wow.
yet. So I imagine he'll take on the mantle of Captain America at some point, possibly.
I hope not.
But
I I like Sebastian Stan, but I don't want him to be Captain America. Anyway, go ahead.
okay, my question to you is, after Avengers 4, and they come to you and they say, Brady, besides Guardians of the Galaxy 3, our slate is empty at this point. What would you continue as sequels, and what would you start off with as new characters to build to a next Avengers movie, and who would those Avengers be?
Do I own Fox yet, or do I not own Fox yet? Because that's like an important part of this discussion.
I will say, let's say that the Fox merger goes through.
Okay, the Fox merger has gone through.
you are
And
able
hallelujah.
to pick and choose, the characters that you want to choose from the X-Men and from I think it's what Fantastic Four falls under that category too, or
Yeah,
do they
yes.
not?
Close enough. We're all sort of hope they do, and no one really is going to know until the contracts are signed. I have read that yes, they'll own enough of the Fantastic, kind of like they own the Hulk, in that they'll own
Hmm.
enough of the Fantastic Four that they can do what they want with it. And I've also read that
Okay.
no, there's this other weird shadow company that actually owns the distribution rights, and they won't own enough. But I want to live in a better universe where Marvel
Okay.
owns all of its characters. Okay, so if I come out of Infinity War, all right, go for it.
You come out of Infinity
Um,
War, you need, let's say, like 5 or 6 movies to establish new characters plus have sequels. And who would your next Avengers team be?
I'd make an X-Men movie. I'd make a Fantastic Four movie. I'd make the Doctor Strange sequel. I depending on I'd make something with an all female heroic cast. Okay, I don't know what I'd call that, and I don't necessarily want to pick out who's going to be in it. But let's just say that you'd have I can't remember the character's name. Valkyrie, you'd have Valkyrie in it from Thor Ragnarok, and you'd have Brie
Hmm.
Larson's Captain Marvel in it, and you'd have, let's say, Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy in it, and for whatever reason, you'd bring 3 or 4. You'd have Hope, and you'd give like we've had nearly. And you know what you'd also do is you'd find like a guy and have a guy be in it. Like maybe you'd have Ant-Man and the Wasp both be part of that team where he's the only guy in the team. So it would be like the opposite of what it normally is, where it's normally
Hmm.
like, 5 guys and then there's one girl for, reasons. And so I do something along those lines. It doesn't matter what I think, although I definitely think you got to make a Doctor Strange sequel, you got to make a Black Panther sequel. They're definitely going to make Black Panther's now made the most money of any Marvel movie, right? I mean, it's number one.
Yep.
So they're gonna make 2 or 3 or 4 more of these for sure. And they're probably going through the back catalog right now, looking for what other characters do we have who are minorities in America that we can make a movie with, and hopefully make a movie like Black Panther with. So if there's a Latino character that they can introduce in a movie and then give their own movie, I'm sure someone at Marvel and DC and the Brain Trust is looking at that real hard right now. Okay, let me start over because I went all over the place there. So I'd make a Doctor Strange sequel. I'd make a Black Panther sequel. That's 2. I'd make X-Men. I'd make the Fantastic Four. I would make an all female movie of some kind.
Okay.
And I don't know. I'd probably, if I'm not, this is after the next Infinity War. This is after Infinity War 4 or whatever, Avengers 4. So
Correct. And Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
If I haven't killed off Tony Stark in any of these movies, then I need to make a Robert Downey Jr.'s finally retiring send-off movie for him. Okay? And that may actually just be Avengers 5. But if it's not going to be Avengers 5, then I'm going to make some kind of Tony Stark, Iron Man, dies heroically, or marries Pepper finally and retires and trains his replacement movie, And actually, yeah, I think that'd be a pretty good idea for a movie is, I'm retired. I saw you like to make Iron Man like suits, but you need somebody to help you, and I would like to help you. Why don't you come to my lab? What's her name? I don't know her name. The
Shuri?
Ironheart. Yeah, Shuri.
Oh, no, Ironheart's Riri Williams.
Riri Williams. Riri, why don't you come to my lab and you know, and I will help you while I become Hank Pym and I'm too old to do this anymore. You know, I got to
Mm-hmm.
make that movie. I think. Okay, so if you're not, you don't want to do coming out of Infinity War Part Two or Avengers 4. The last thing you want to do with the next Avengers movie is make a movie where you got 40 characters in it, right?
Right.
Because you've done that, and they fought this universe destroying level entity. I think probably what you do in Infinity, not Infinity War, but in let's say Avengers 5 is you have Galactus be the bad guy, and you have the Avengers and the Fantastic Four fighting Galactus and the Silver Surfer. And I don't think you have the X-Men in it, except for maybe the new guy you've cast as Wolverine, who was just hanging out, getting a beer at Avengers Mansion that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your movie, So it's a threat to Earth, but it's not a he's going to destroy the universe threat. And you can weave some characters in and lose some other characters without it being the end of the world. In the same way that, Civil War didn't have everyone in it. Hulk wasn't there and Thor wasn't there. I think the same thing. You no longer can make a movie with it. The Guardians of the Galaxy wouldn't be there. You wouldn't have any characters from that, and you wouldn't have most of the mutant X-Men characters either. You just maybe pick one and
Mm-hmm.
just have them kind of be, Beast. He was an Avenger and an X-Men, and I would love for, and quite frankly, we'll get Kelsey Grammer to play him again, or at least do the voice. It'd be all CGI, but Kelsey does the voice, Anyway, so that's my slate. What's your slate? I want to hear what you would do, David.
Well, I know that James Gunn has said that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is the first of his movies that's going to be affected by the Marvel Cinematic Universe at large.
Right.
And it makes me wonder, is the team composition going to change because either they kill characters off, or do they strand some characters on Earth and leave other characters in space? So, that Guardians is going to be interesting. The five or six movies I would do, obviously, like a Black Panther sequel and a Doctor Strange sequel are the first two. Mm-hmm. You do a female-oriented movie, something along the lines of like a Captain America movie, but
right.
Instead, you finally pull the trigger on Black Widow, and whether that's Black Widow and another female character that you're pulling from, there's a wealth of female Avengers that you can go back and actually pull from, and would possibly work well with Black Widow.
Sure.
So you have that movie. I'd love to see a Nova movie to expand the space Marvel side of things.
Yeah.
With Richard Rider, not the new guy Sam, but I like Sam, but I love Richard Rider. And then
is Sam the kid?
Sam's the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. No kids allowed.
And for me, I'd love to see either a Miles Morales Spider-Man or
yes.
Kamala Khan, who's Miss Marvel, brought up as one of those characters, because they need more of that. They need more characters where they can put the 9-contract deal on them at the correct age to get them through however many movies that they're going to do.
I just figured out what was wrong with Doctor Strange. You ready?
Yep.
There's only one thing wrong with Doctor Strange. I know that the character is from New York City, but if you're going to get Benedict Cumberbatch, who looks like Doctor Strange, to play it, just let him have an English accent. Just let him be like, look, I'm from England, but I moved to New York because I like the city better. I'm from London or whatever, and I moved to New York because the nightlife or whatever, because I'm a playboy. Just let him have the English accent, because he God love him. That is not an American accent I have ever heard before in my life. So that is the one thing I think someone should have said. Mr. Cumberbatch, I don't think this is working. Why don't you just use your real voice? And he'd be like, okay, but okay in whatever kind of weird English way they say okay, tally ho or whatever. Um, yeah, that's the only problem with that movie, and unfortunately, it will be a problem with the sequel too. Maybe his American accent will get better. I kind of doubt it, but maybe we can only hope. I mean, that's a good slate of movies. I need this Sony deal is so weird, where they have this sharing agreement, and they and I don't know that I know that there are like specifics, like, hey, you guys can make 2 or 3, or you can have him for all of these movies. I don't know if there must be a set number. 4 or 5 movies that Peter Parker's allowed to be in. And then they're talking about, well, what we're going to do. Obviously, they're making a Venom movie for apparently no good reason. I don't know, and they want to make like this. They want to take all these Spider-Man villains somehow and turn them into a cinematic universe spin-off that's only sort of, somewhat somehow connected. And I just want to grab somebody at Sony, whoever it is, and shake them and go, look, it's a license to print money. Hand them all these characters under the agreement that you guys take whatever amount of money it is, 50%, and let them do what they want with it. And it's a license. It's just like free money. You know what I mean? You don't, those aren't your characters. They're never going to be your characters. You got the best end of a bankruptcy sale in the history of mankind, and now it's a license to print money. Just hand it all to them, and take the dough. But yeah, I'd love my only concern about a Miles Morales movie is that I think you got to kill off Peter Parker, and like I know that like the cartoons and the comics and all this sort of stuff have basically have them existing together. Now, like that's like we have the Disney Channel app, and so I watched that Spider-Man cartoon that Disney has. I don't know if you've seen that. It's decent. You should check it out sometime. You'd probably like it. But they're at Horizon High for some reason, and they're all sort of there together. And Osborn, he's friends with the Osborns. He knows the dad's a villain by now, and Miles is just there, and he's another student. And like 6 or 7 episodes in, after Peter's been Spider-Man for a while, Miles becomes Spider-Man too, and so he gets bit by something too, and he develops spider powers, and now there's 2 of them running around, and like Peter sort of takes him under his wing because he's a little bit younger than Peter, but he's not so much younger than Peter that it really makes sense. It's not like Peter's like 30 and Miles is 16 or whatever. They're like Peter's like 17 and Miles is 15. And it's this strange. It's a strange dynamic. And that's the only thing that I think is going to be weird about the Miles Morales Spider-Man is going to be, can this coexist? Can you have two Spider-Men? Are you going to have to kill off Peter in the MCU and send him back to Sony, or just forget about him, like they do with Jane Foster, where we're just never going to mention Peter Parker again. Hey, Miles, how you doing? It's going to be a weird transition. I have faith in them. They're going to pull it off. But yeah, I'm that'd be a great movie. That'd be a movie I'd love to see. But I want a Spider-Man trilogy of movies before we get out of there. We got a shot at making 3 good Spider-Man movies in a row, and we've never had that before. It's like a turkey and bowling. It's rare. It can happen, but it's rare. So.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see as far as like the 20th Century Fox deal, if it goes through, because I know that somebody brought up that they I think it's Comcast or some network was like going to go after it again, and I'm just like, why? I understand that you want the money printing machine, but just no. And then, like the Sony stuff, like, okay, yes, lend Spider-Man, that's cool, but now you're messing things up with like having a Venom movie, like,
Yeah,
really? Why?
yeah. No, it's Venom of whatever characters they own or that they can make movies from. Venom, and I say this having not seen the movie, and I hate to be the guy before the movie comes out to be like, oh no, that's terrible. I hate to be the guy before Ant Man going, oh, Venom could be great. I don't, I till the movie comes out, I don't know. But if you had access to all of the Spider-Man characters and you could make any movie, I gotta think there was a movie to be made with some other like heroic character in the Spider-Man verse who's not basically a mass murderer like Venom
Right.
is. Um, but he's cool looking, and that suit is awesome. And they make the movies are a visual medium, and I'm sure that sold a lot of it. Was like, look at how cool this suit is. Look at Todd McFarlane's art from the '90s, and
Yep.
some studio executive went, yeah, we could. That'll be awesome. The trailer's going to be great. The kids will love it. So I don't know. Nobody knows anything. It could work. I don't think it will, but it could. Anyway, I had one other little whatever I wanted to say about it. Oh, so one of the dings against the Fox Disney deal has been, I keep hearing and reading, there aren't enough movie studios, and you're going to get rid of one of the movie studios, and creative people who want to make movies are going to have one less place to go to make movies. And to those people, I say, you're nuts. You're living in the golden age of making movies and television. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon, you've got Hulu, you've got Apple now is making stuff. I am sure that you've got YouTube, who is maybe not ideal, but if you're a young, scrappy, whatever filmmaker, and you need a place to distribute something, you've got YouTube, you've got Venmo, and then you have the major movie studios. So please don't sell me on this idea that Disney buying Fox is the end of like artistic filmmaking, and I don't believe that. And I don't want a good Fantastic Four movie before I die. That's really what I want out of life at this point. Is one good Fantastic Four movie. Just one, please, for me. Somebody get on this.
Yeah, I mean, when Marvel decides to cancel the Fantastic Four comic series just to get away from the movie, something's going on.
Well, and the reading that there was supposedly a lot of behind the scenes spite and in a lot of that. I think the MCU wanted the Fantastic Four, I think they wanted a character for a villain, and Sony wouldn't give it to them, or Fox wouldn't give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, well, we're just, we're not going to do anything to support you. It's kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face, canceling the comic that's founded the Marvel universe. This is the first Marvel comic. This is the thing Stan and Jack created first in 1962, and, breathed life into the whole thing. The thing about Marvel that's so, in my mind, is so great is that Stan Lee had written comics for years, and he was done, and he was told his wife he was quitting. He was working for it was the company that became Marvel, but I think it was called Timely. And he turns to his wife and he says, I'm out, I'm done, I'm quitting. And his wife says, well, before you do that, and it was because he felt like hemmed in and he never got to do what he wanted to do. And his wife says to him, why don't you write one book the way you want to write it? And why don't you do one book the way it should be done in your mind? And then if you quit, you quit, but at least you will have done it the way you wanted to do it. And the book he does with Jack Kirby is the Fantastic Four. And so the whole thing is built on this idea of, a creative person going, I'm going to do this the way I want to do it. And it's going to be different than the way DC does it. It's going to be different than the way anybody else has done it. And I mean, that's really, and the cinematic universe has, I think, kept that spirit alive. It is, I mean, this is different than the way movies were done. This is different than the way comic book movies were done. Nobody ever did it this way, and in my mind, did it the right way until these guys came along and did it this way. So, hats off.
Exactly. And now we're counting down to one of probably the biggest comic book movies that's ever going to come out. And I say that with like the potential for even more stuff, like if they ever have a cosmic Marvel universe on top of like the Earth-based Marvel universe, and they have something like the Annihilation Wave where it threatens the entire galaxy and you have everybody like trying to fight it off, then I'll take my words back. But with 40 plus characters overlapping from major characters to minor characters, it's going to be interesting to see how it's all handled between Infinity War and what they're calling like the untitled Avengers 4 movie that comes out next year. So it'll be interesting to see where they go and what they have as far as that slate of movies after Guardians 2.
Yeah. I mean, I think they'll do this. They'll come up with something and they'll do this again. But I think it'll be 10 years before they do it again.
Oh, absolutely.
They won't do it again. It won't be 5 years and we're all, hey, we're getting the band back together, for Avengers 5 or Avengers 6 or whatever. It'll be, a decade from now, and they'll have 50 characters that they're trying to cram into, or 60 characters or whatever. And they're like, all right, we're filming a trilogy this time. We're filming it all together, Lord of the Rings style. And, and they're fighting Sauron. So, there really is a lot of Lord of the Rings overlap in this one, or Sauron, I don't know, one of them. But, I have been really happy for 10 years. These movies got me through some really tough times. And I'm really a thankful guy to have been able to go see them and go watch them and enjoy them and feel like, somebody picked up comics, and in particular picked up Marvel comics, and got that same joy out of them that I did, and translated it to a bunch of movies. So it's been very cool.
It has been. And Brady, I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking all about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what's coming up. And we'll just have to see if it ends the way that you think it does. And
I'm taking bets now. First movie ends, he snaps his fingers, half the universe is wiped out. That's how the first one ends. I have no idea how the second one ends, by the way. I have no clue, which makes it great. But the first one, yeah, Thanos gets all the Infinity Stones, snaps his fingers. Boom. You heard it here first.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.